Good afternoon. I'm going to do something that university presidents very rarely do, which is when it says that a university president's going to give a welcome, I'm actually going to give a welcome instead of a speech. I'm not going to comment on what politicians do in that context, but I do want to say I want to welcome, of course, our two distinguished senators, numerous county officials who are here to explore what I certainly think is one of the great sort of challenges of our time, and something that if we don't eventually get right, we're going to have deeper challenges to face. We're thrilled that you've chosen as the location for this the Baker Institute, and so with really little more than to say, we're very grateful that you've made the time to be here. Rice University is always thrilled to be a resource in whatever way for our elected leaders and those responsible for our governmental policies, and we're just very grateful to be able to contribute in this small way. And with that, I will turn it over to Ambassador Jirijian, the founding director of the Baker Institute for Public Policy.
Well, welcome. I have a 5-hour introduction. They call it a filibuster in Washington, right, Senators? I just want to second what President Lieberman has said. We're really very happy to host this important exchange and discussion on one of the most critical issues, the entitlement programs in the United States and what we're doing here in Texas. And we welcome you all warmly. Let me take the opportunity to blow our own horn. We just were discussing with the President that like Rice University is ranked in the top 20 universities in America. We just got word that the Baker Institute was ranked in the very top ranks of U.S. think tanks and the best university-based think tanks in the world, and number 6 in the best energy programs in the United States and the world. So we're very happy with that, and we have John Diamond here, of course, who introduced himself. He's our public finance and tax and fiscal reform fellow. We look very seriously at the problems of fiscal reform, entitlements, and we're very happy to have the opportunity to learn from all of you today. Thank you.
Well, very well. My name is Rick Garnto, and I'm president of First Financial Benefits and helped put this plan together years ago. And we're very pleased to have an opportunity to meet with both of you today to have a conversation about how sort of the grassroots and out here in Texas that we've been able to put together an alternative, a privatized alternative that's 3 decades old and has some actual economic and history through some challenging times in our country in the last 30 years. And what I'd like to do to start is just a couple of things. We're going to be confined by time, so I wanted to be sure, I got to be the bad guy here to be sure that everybody limits their remarks to as short as possible so that we have plenty of time to vet the conversation as we go through this. And what I'm going to do is have each person introduce themselves and their title, and then we're going to go kind of follow an order of comments, and I'll call on you to go forward with some comments as we go. And then when we finish, there should be some time to have a discussion, ask some questions, and that should take up our 50 minutes. I also want to thank both David and Mr. Dirijian, Ambassador Dirijian, for having us here at the Baker Institute and accommodating us today. Y'all have great sandwiches over at the cafe, so we're early getting. Okay, so let me just go around the room and have everybody sort of identify themselves, name and title, and tell us who you are.
My name is Ray Holbrook. I have no title, but I used to be county judge in Galveston County years ago, and that's it. So I've been retired and very fortunate.
The judge sells himself short. The judge and Rick are the two that got us to where we are today, for which I'm the current county judge and extremely thankful that they did what they did. I'm Mark Henry, the current Galveston County judge. And thanks to Rice, this is the only way I was ever going to get into Rice.
First Republican county judge in Galveston County history, ever.
My name's Harvey Baseman. I'm with the County Attorney's Office of Galveston County. Thank you for inviting me today.
I'm Kent Pollard and Matagorda County Precinct 2 Commissioner.
I'm Robin Garrett. I'm the Brazoria County Tax Assessor Collector, and I was a county employee for 16 years prior to being elected, and I've been in office for 12 years.
Matt Sebesta, Brazoria County Commissioner Precinct 2, starting the back half of my second term, so glad to be here.
Sorry, we skipped Dr. Diamond.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm John Diamond. I'm the Baker Institute Kelly Fellow in Public Finance.
We definitely don't want to skip you.
Suzanne Kachera. I joined the Matagorda County Treasurer's Office in 1982 when this plan was in its inception, and I recently retired and enjoying the fruits of it.
David Lebron, President of Rice University.
Ed Ridgen, Director of the Baker Institute.
I'm Jay Guerrero with Senator John Cornyn's office.
And the first test today will be having to be able to pronounce the ambassador's last name. Okay, so let's do this. Do you have any comments to start? Would you all like to make any comments?
I think Dr. Diamond was going to
Dr.
go
Diamond?
ahead
Okay.
and just kind of
And then we'll
talk
follow
about his
him.
expertise.
Okay.
And then you'll follow.
So just a quick 2-minute introduction is that the U.S. is facing dual fiscal crises. One in the short run, we face a short-term deficit that we must take care of, and one in the long run. The long-run deficit is mainly due to overspending in entitlement programs. And I spend a lot of time researching different reforms that could potentially solve this long-run fiscal crisis that the U.S. faces. So I'm delighted to come today and just listen to a real-world policy alternative that sounds like it's been successful in action as opposed to just taking up pages in a book. So I'm delighted to be here, and I think this is an extremely important topic that has to be addressed in the coming years.
Let me just say thank you for having us today. I know Senator Cruz and I are very comfortable extolling the Texas model to our friends in Washington, D.C. And it's great to be able to take the information we're going to learn here today about the Brazoria County, Galveston, and Matagorda County model. That's not just theory. It is, as Dr. Diamond said, it's the product of long experience and success. And this is the number one issue confronting our country today, which is overspending, spending more than we're taking in, getting our economy growing again, not by bigger government, but by the private sector, being able to do what it's always done is help grow us out of this, hopefully get more taxpayers by getting more people back to work, but also dealing with this issue of unfunded liabilities for Medicare and Social Security, which he can talk the numbers that it's literally trillions of dollars potentially. And so we're going to have to deal with this. The maddening thing about this is that this is not really a matter where one political party has all the knowledge. Everybody understands the problem, but having the political courage and the leadership to actually address it or deal with it, that's what's in short supply. So Ambassador Dreegen, I'm always a little nervous when I come back here to the Baker Institute since I hired Jay Guerrero away from you, my regional director.
Forgive you, Senator.
But I hope you forgive me. If you give me absolution, I would appreciate that. But thanks to Dr. LeBron and Ambassador Dreegen and the great work you all are doing here at the Baker Institute. We expect to learn a lot today listening from you.
Well, and I am grateful to the senior senator from Texas for including me today, and I'm very grateful for Rice University and the Baker Institute hosting this, and I'm grateful to each of you for coming up and spending time visiting on this issue that is of enormous consequence. Our nation right now, the fiscal and economic challenges could not be greater. And there are going to be painful moments in Washington because I think right now there are a lot of people reluctant to actually get serious in terms of saving our entitlement system. There's no doubt if you look at the federal budget that entitlements are growing at a point that is unsustainable. And every one of us has an interest in making sure that entitlements and Social Security in particular remain strong and solvent and a bulwark of our society for generations to come. And I am hopeful that by looking to real-world examples like what the three counties here have done, that you will see leaders from both parties in Washington who put aside the partisan politics and roll up their sleeves and start fixing the problem. Start fixing the problem to strengthen Social Security, to make sure, number one, that seniors right now depending on it can continue to depend upon it, and number two, that the next generation of those retiring can have a strong and vibrant retirement system that they can count on. And I think one of the most compelling things that I'm looking forward to hearing more about and telling the story more about is the power of ownership and individual ownership. And that's something qualitatively different from simply counting on and hoping on a check from the government, having direct ownership of assets. So I appreciate y'all being here to tell that story, and we got a lot of work to do.
Okay, well, thank you all for your comments. I hope we can meet your expectations today and give you a good view of this. I think our goal today is, rather than try to get into the weeds too much, other than the fact that we have a graph up there that shows the comparison between Social Security behind us as well and our plan.
So you make us work putting the graph on.
I've also got an attachment here with it that goes with it. But in any event, I think we're going to probably take a 10,000-foot view of this thing and try to hear comments. What I'd like to do is maybe have Judge Holbrook start out and give us a little history of the plan and how he initiated this thing back in 1979, 80, and began the talk or the discussion about that.
Thank you very much, Rick, and Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz. Thanks for being here and letting us come up here. In about 1978, when I was a county judge, our county attorney named Bill Decker, who is now deceased, he employed Harvey, and that helped us as well, was visionary, and he knew Social Security was in big trouble. And so he asked some of us if he could submit a letter to the Social Security Administration saying that we were going to drop out. And at that time, you had to give them 2 years' notice. Well, he submitted that letter, and then in '79, we started looking for possibilities of what could be done to substitute for Social Security. And so he found a gentleman named Don Thibodeau, and then Don met with Rick Garnto here, and together they formulated a plan. It took a while. It was very, very difficult, as Rick will tell you. We told him that we had to pay the same amount in, and we had to get as much out as Social Security or more. And so they developed that plan, and then in '79 and in 1980, we had meetings with all of the county employee groups around the county. We also invited Social Security Administration to come in and discuss their view of our plan. And then we had an election of all county employees. And I would never have believed this ahead of time, but the plan carried by a 3-to-1 majority among county employees. So our 2-year notice was up, and we dropped out as of January 1st, 1981. So it's 31 years now that we've been in this alternate plan. And it has done more than just what we expected. It has given us greater benefits than Social Security, and at roughly the same cost. We have gone up on the cost a little bit in intervening years, but it worked like a charm. And of course, we didn't have to do a transition because we just dropped out completely and started this plan. Everybody in the United States will have to go through some sort of transition plan if you all do anything similar to this at all. But it has really worked well, and I think that the history shows that we did the right thing. We had a democratic election of all county employees when we did it. We had the opportunity to drop out, which has now been closed to us. Our friend Congressman Jack Brooks and a few others sponsored a plan that closed the door on local government dropping out of Social Security. So it has to be done by the Congress now. Thank you very much, Rick.
Okay. You know, we took a collective sigh of relief that the plan worked about 5 years ago after 25 years. Because we were hoping it would work, and it did. But I think what I do is we testified to Congress, to the House Committee of Financial Services back in 2005. And this is on the net, but I pulled it off because the primary design features of the plan, which are the main objectives of the plan, I wanted to just read those out loud if I could, because I think it'll give you kind of a quick view of you know, what it was all about. The primary design features of the plan were these. These were the instructions they gave us. Design the plan that mirrored Social Security benefits, where it had retirement, survivorship, and disability benefits. Back in '81, you may remember that Medicare was one of the 4 components of Social Security. And then in '86, it was separated out as a separate component. And the only benefit that we did not try to fund for at that time was Medicare, because it was in there. So we were trying to match up or mirror Social Security with the 3 main benefits. Design the plan to have equal to or greater benefits with equal to or less costs than Social Security. Design the plan to have fixed costs over a long period of time, which we had to actuarially compute on a 30-year basis. We have a running 30-year thing that we do on this. Design the plan with more flexibility than both Social Security and their current state plan, Texas County and District Retirement Plan, which is the plan that every county employee is in now, TCDRS, which y'all are very familiar with, I know. Design the plan to have a guaranteed returns on the investments, that is, take no risks. This was a plan designed to be based on a banking model of guaranteed returns versus an investment model. I think that when Bush originally promoted the private accounts back a couple of years ago, he looked at our plan, but they linked it to the market, and when they did, they didn't have any underlying guarantees, and I think people were fearful of the market aspect of it more so than the private accounts aspect of it. And this plan here is based on a banking model where there are actually guaranteed returns and have been 4% for the last 30 years. Allow for hardship withdrawal. Well, that's the minimum guarantee. Yeah. We allowed for hardship withdrawals and lump sum with distributions at that time, but as this thing matured, as the plans matured, we removed hardship withdrawals and some lump sum distribution withdrawals in some cases, primarily because of the overall volume of leakage that we noticed not only in these plans, but in 401ks. You guys are facing some of that on a national basis and talking about it now. And that leakage is getting to be a growing number because people can access that money and they pay it back, then they access it again and through the loans. And so they're really, since they have no other retirement, that's their plan. And you know, they're affecting their future retirement benefits. We did not include a cost of living adjustment in our plan because of the cost of living adjustment is very, very high, as Social Security has recently found out in the last few years. And it was unnecessary because we started out with such a lead, we figured we could beat them to the end of the race before they ever caught up to us. Design the plan that has a private accounts and private ownership of the plan of assets. So these are part of the estate of the individual versus a promise to pay that may or may not be there. Design the plan that the employees can leave for their estate, for their family, and design the plan that has built-in tax efficiencies. Social Security, you pay tax, you pay income tax on your contribution going in, income tax on your contribution coming out, and coordinate that with other benefits. There's a real reduction in your overall dollars going in and going out in terms of efficiencies of a dollar, as opposed to what we do. Ours goes in tax deductibly and comes out taxably. So we at least get one half of the equation not taxable. So those were the basic design features, and we met those standards and continue to meet those every year. When we do our report every year, our annual report, we go over these things and report on that as we do our annual reports each year. And each year we succeed in this particular goal.
Rick, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
You talked about this being based on a banking model
Right.
as opposed to a market model, and that's one of the distinctions between the Bush proposal on Social Security
Right.
earlier. Who guarantees that money will be there?
Well, we're in the commercial market. We're out in the private sector, so we bought contracts from insurance companies with
Okay.
guarantees. Now they're exposed to the market,
Right.
but they're giving us a guaranteed contract.
Right.
So, if we ultimately talk about scaling up to a national level, there are other ways of financing and funding, but that's the way we do it here
Okay,
at this level
thank
here. So let's see. Let's do this. Let's go with Mark, who's currently the Galveston County Judge, and have him make some comments about what he sees in his experience.
Sure. As you guys can appreciate, one of my aggravations is when I hear some of your colleagues say you can't do this. And I say, we are doing this. So you're wrong. The greatest asset I think that this program gives me is in a recruiting tool. Galveston County has to compete in the Houston market for talent. And whenever I say you're going to have to take a little bit less than you would in the private sector because this is public service, but you're not going to pay into Social Security, I think I've closed every single one of those deals so far. And it's also important, I think he touched on it, that if you get one paycheck from the county, you have an account with your name on it. It's your property. It's going with you. So you're not hoping that the county will continue to fund it. That's just not part of the equation. It's your money, and you can take it with you. So one side of me kind of hopes this doesn't work because we will continue to be able to be more competitive than my counterparts because we can offer them an alternative to Social Security, which for the more senior level people, they fully understand what that's all about, but even the junior people understand it as well. They don't expect Social Security to be around. So when I say that we don't care or you shouldn't care, come to work for Galveston County because we're going to fund your account starting the first paycheck you get. It's a tremendous asset for us.
Great. Harvey?
In 78, 79, 80, and 81, I was down in the trenches. I was a newly hired employee, and I listened to other employees at that time. And for the first couple of years, there was a great amount of trepidation. But as the period of time went by, a couple of 3 years, the employees began to really appreciate the benefits of the plan and recognize that this was their money and it was something that they could count on, that it would be there when they needed it. So over the period of time, I honestly cannot think of anybody today who is employed by Galveston County that thinks ill of the plan.
Kent, you have a comment?
Again, I've only been in office for 2 years, but I use the plan as a hiring tool for my employees, and when I can actually sit them down, and of course Matagorda County is a rural county, and our pay scale is not tremendously high on a county basis, but I still use it as a hiring tool because I can sit a person down and actually show them on paper, not only are you receiving your salary, but your additional benefits. It's just a tremendous asset for us, and I think Suzanne, who was a longtime employee of the county and was with the county during the inception of our plan, and now retired. She's a first-hand case of what it can do for you.
And if it's appropriate, I have a copy of my September 30th report I get from First Financial. That pride of ownership that was Judge Holbrook mentioned, that money is mine. If I die tomorrow, it belongs to my family. As an active employee, I had twice my annual salary as life insurance. I now have a paid-up life insurance of $50,000 that somebody's going to own because of my participation in the plan. That pride of ownership, I think, is very, very important, and that shows us that you're welcome to that if you want it. I'm going to get another one in a few days. Final year, but it shows my participation and how that plan has benefited me.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Interestingly, when we had the vote in Galveston County among the employees, we had a lot of labor union people who were very questionable about it. In fact, they were in opposition. And a number of county officials who were old Franklin Roosevelt Democrats were in opposition to it. They said Social Security is a Packard case or the Cadillac case, and we shouldn't change it. But when we had that election, they finally became convinced.
And Judge, at the time, everybody in Galveston County was a Democrat, right?
That's correct. That's right.
Including me.
Everybody in Missouri County, Matagorda County, and
Galveston.
Galveston County. In fact, they had the first county judge in Missouri County in 90-something, and then you were the first Republican county judge this last time. I mean, it's been gradual evolution. But Robin, you want to go ahead and make some comments?
Oh, sure. I pointed out in my introduction to you I was a 16-year county employee prior to being an elected official because it mattered to me as a county employee to be in this plan. When I first hired out, I did not quite understand it, to be honest with you. I didn't understand the benefits of it. But as the longer that I worked and longer I was part of the plan, I grew to know the ownership like Suzanne was talking about and realized the benefit that it would give me as I continued to be a county employee. It was a great incentive for me to continue to work for the county. As in recruiting, they talked about, but staying power makes a difference also. And now as an elected official, I use it, as they expressed also, as a recruitment tool for my employees and to make sure that they understand the benefit for them. And now as in my 28th year of employment at the county and one more term of office just beginning this January, I start looking towards my retirement and then again understand how much more important it is to me as I'm older and getting ready towards retirement and how grateful I am, quite honestly, to have that benefit waiting for me. I get a statement just like Suzanne does. I know exactly how much money I have in the account. I know exactly what kind of benefit it's going to give me when I do no longer work for the county. And it's been just a tremendous asset to me as an employee, as an elected official, and as an individual. And it, like I said, whatever ownership that may be left from my past, my descendants will also benefit too.
You and Suzanne must have started working for the county when you were
Yes, sir.
children.
We were 12.
As Commissioner Pollard said, Matagorda County is not a high-paying salary, so our salaries were not that high. But the accrual is the parent.
Great.
Matt?
Having only been a county employee for 7 years and being in high school when all of this came up with Galveston County kind of leading the way, I don't have the type of experience with it that Judge Holbrook or Suzanne does. However, I think Senator Cruz hit it with the direct ownership of assets. That is what we have. But I can tell you from the experience of our employees as they retire or pass away, we had one that passed away in an accident back in the mid-90s on the job. He was wearing his seatbelt. He received all the benefits. There's an additional $50,000 benefit if you die in an auto accident while wearing a seatbelt. His family benefited from that. Our retirees are just happy as can be when they get to retirement and they see what they're going to be receiving on a monthly basis. And also the disability benefits. We have a former county commissioner who became ill in his last couple of months of on the job, and he still draws a disability check every month. His contribution is made into the plan. He's still whole because of the benefits that were developed and put together in this program. So it is of great benefit to our employees, and as is mentioned, it's a great recruiting tool to talk to our employees, both the young ones and hiring professionals. So it has benefits all up and down, and it's a great asset to have.
One of the things that we talk about this stuff, especially Judge Holbrook and I have been talking about this for 30 years. We just celebrated our Galveston's 30th birthday and Missouri's 30th birthday, and on our annual report we put happy birthday, so we made it 30 years, you know. But we have been looking at this issue for a lot of years. And one of the things that we've noticed, you know, we've tried to consider how you could scale this up, how you could convert the cost of transition. There's a number of ways out there to do this, but one of the things that I've noticed, and I just want to put this out there for you because I'm sure you're seeing this, but of all the people that we deal with, it appears that age 50 is the break point. In other words, anybody under age 50 that I talk to is really not counting Social Security into the factor of their financial plan for retirement. At least that's what I see. And it appears that somebody between 55 and 65, depending on how much other wealth they have, take it seriously or not seriously. And then 50 to 55 is sort of a mixed bag. So it appears that 50 is the break point. And if you looked at Social Security retirement at 67, 68 years old or whatever it's going to be, I know I've had 8 of my checks clear. I was 66 in April and 8 of them cleared. So I know I'm in good shape, but there's others that may not feel that way, okay, depending on their age. And the transitional cost of this thing could be, some of the proposals that are out there is that if you let them get into the market and they were going to make X amount of dollars and they were earning, like this, and then there was a trough here, and there was a line here, and this was the trough where they were underperforming. If the government just insured that part on an ongoing basis, if that was occurring, for example, if you had the 2008, those retirees who retired from 2008 to 2010, if they just covered the cost of that trough, it would be minimal compared to the cost of the overall entitlement program right now.
Mm-hmm.
To transition into that thing is possible too. The financing is available to do that and so forth. But my biggest concern is not the economics on any of this. My biggest concern is how do you replace the dollars in the federal budget that's being used in Social Security to finance the federal budget, and how you do that, and how we would actually come to a point where we wouldn't be taxed with some other tax because we were actually taking money that we were using in the federal budget and not having it available to us anymore. So I know that we've spent a lot of time. In fact, I told Judge, I said, I've got a stack like this of articles and things, that I've kept over the years, and he said, I do too. It's not that big, because he keeps those as well. So I just wanted to pitch that out. I know, because those are the issues that y'all are dealing with up there.
One of the mistakes I think that President Bush made, and he came to Galveston to see us in April of '05, right after he was reelected, and he kept the Wall Street option open. And I think that was a mistake. If he had adopted this banking plan that we have, where you had a guaranteed return,
right,
I think he would have quieted a whole lot of opposition and critics in the Congress and around the country.
You'd actually have a quasi. The only way nationally you could do this is on a quasi market banking model. You'd have to combine them. You couldn't do exactly this on a national basis and make it perform. But you could make it perform if you were covering that trough. And so you'd let them invest, and they may actually come out way ahead.
Right.
But if they don't come out ahead, you've got an underlying protection, a safety net underneath there. And the cost of that is like compared to what the cost of the funding this thing is right now.
I'd be interested, Rick and Dr. Diamond, would it be possible to do this on an elective basis, or would this be, does this only make sense if a county does it, or a city does it, or a state does it, or if everybody does it?
What, you mean let every individual in the country, every person
an individual person could elect
themselves?
between one of the other. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah, the problem with choice is some people you may end up with people choosing who the people that don't work would choose the government, and the people that are going to save and would pay the most in the Social Security would choose this plan, and that could hurt the government's financial position.
It's an anti-selection situation, just like you're dealing with Obamacare. There's a possibility of anti-selection.
Adverse selection could be a real problem in a choice plan with this. I'm interested in what is the contribution rate compared to the 12.4% employer?
10%.
10%. Mm-hmm. So you save 2.4% right off the bat.
And we, $25,000 a year wage earner, Social Security pay them $1,000. We pay them $1,800. $50,000 wage earner would be 15 versus 36, and 75,000 plus would be 2,500 versus 5,000. And then I have some other numbers that are the actual guarantees in here that shows what the projections are. And the GAO did a study on this in '99, and their only criticism about our plan was that we didn't support the lower income people as well. But I had talked to Teresa Wilson, who did that study, and I told her, I said, you're not using our 4% guaranteed contractual numbers. And she said, well, we're going to use our own numbers. And I said, well, why wouldn't you use the numbers that actually occurred? She said, we use our own numbers. I said, okay. So, it was what it was.
Welcome to dealing with the federal government.
Exactly.
Can you elect to put in more than 10%? Just out of curiosity.
Could you put more in?
I mean, can an individual choose to contribute
Oh, they
more
do
than 10%?
individually, yeah,
Absolutely.
but it's not
So-
matched any more than that.
So this could increase savings for the economy, which would lead to greater capital accumulation, greater growth, which you were talking about. So there's another
Effectively, under
positive.
457 of the code, which this is under, allows 100% of your pay can go into it,
Okay.
up to the maximum of your salary, up to 17,500 a year now. But there's a matching component now, and then we have a voluntary amount, and as long as it stays under the caps, then we're okay. So.
Interesting.
So several of y'all have talked about the advantage in terms of recruiting. What is the pitch that you give to, say, a skeptical young employee as to why this is a better deal for them?
Take all that, Mark.
That's easy. The pitch is, you, like I said, one paycheck and you've got an account with your name on it. And I'll brag on Galveston County employees momentarily. Most employee can tell you where they are with their retirement funds, with their anticipated retirement check, how long they've got to go. I don't know of anyone really that can tell you that with Social Security because it's such a moving target. Who knows if they're going to change the age again, if they're going to be funded, whatever. So that's the pitch. Again, we can't always pay competitively with the private sector because we're not the private sector, but we can do something the private sector can't do for you, and that's put you your own Social Security alternative. And again, fully funded from the first day. You're not hoping that Galveston County stays solvent, which we will, by the way, for the bond companies. You're not hoping that everything works out well for you. It's already there, and it's guaranteed.
You get a feeling that you're master of your own domain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people are participating in the system right now?
There's about 5,000 people overall that have been in the plan, maybe 5,500 in the last, and right now we probably have active 2,800, 3,000 range. We had 5 plans out. Hayward Robertson, who was the commissioner of Social Security back in 1980, wrote a book on the coming fall of Social Security. When he left, he and I sort of traveled around the country and did a road show on these programs. And literally counties and cities were lined up to send letters in, so they sent letters in. Well, that was a mistake because Carter had done that study, that actuarial study in '79 that showed that we were going to make it to about 2,000 on an income versus revenue versus expense basis. And so they had to make some changes at that time. And as a result of that, we ended up having to, they had to send the letters in for 2 years. Well, they received hundreds and hundreds of letters. And it looked like, rats fleeing a sinking ship. And so they pulled the plug and changed the law.
He had 50 counties in Texas lined up to get out of Social Security when that '83 bill was passed, Senator Cornyn. And you know what that did. It closed the door on any other local governments getting out and was supposed to have saved Social Security for the future of everybody.
There's about 8 million
didn't quite
people.
do it.
There's about 8 million people out today out of 150 million people workers. And, the reason it was never included in the bill as a mandatory thing for states and subdivisions thereof in 1935 was because it's a federal tax and a state, and you can't, that's unconstitutional as I understand it. You can't tax the Fed can't tax the state. So you're doing a payroll tax. So they didn't include them in there. And it was voluntary, but they didn't have to mandatorily be in there until '83, and then they changed that. They challenged it in court, but I don't think there was a way they were going to make any difference at that point, it seemed like. But that was the issue in '83 when they stopped it.
I think we're done. Well, I'm Senator John Cornyn. I'm delighted to be here at Rice's Baker Institute with my colleague, Senator Ted Cruz, to learn from the experience of 3 Texas counties that have chosen an alternative to Social Security, which has yielded great results. And we've heard a lot about that today as we study how to deal with what we all know to be an unsustainable path for Medicare and Social Security. Our desire is to try to find a way to save them so we can keep the promise we've made to our seniors that when their time comes, that they'll be there for them. That's not a promise we can make today. Republicans and Democrats alike understand that, but what's lacking right now is the leadership and political courage to make the decision to deal with it rather than just ignore it. But we can't ignore it, and that's one of the benefits we've learned today, one of the alternatives that might be available for some counties and other jurisdictions. But I'm delighted to be here with my colleague, Senator Cruz. Let me turn it over to him for any comments he'd like to make, and then we'll answer some questions. And the good news is we have a lot of experts here who will answer the questions. Okay.
Well, I'm appreciative likewise of the opportunity of being here, the opportunity to be with Senator Cornyn, to be with these leaders and experts. You know, every American, I think, is united in the need to save and preserve Social Security. Since it was signed into law by FDR, Social Security has been a critical bulwark for ensuring that our seniors can live a standard of life that is appropriate, that is respectful. It has provided strength for our country. And yet Social Security, unfortunately, is careening towards insolvency. And a great many politicians in Washington have been unwilling to step up and make the serious choices that are needed to save that program. I think this afternoon was a very useful discussion of the sort of creative reforms that can save and preserve Social Security. Number one, to ensure that every single senior on Social Security today continues to receive every penny of their benefits. But number two, to ensure that young people, so many young people right now who doubt that Social Security will be there and we will be strong when they retire, to ensure that the program is strong for young people, for the next generation and the generation after that. And I think one of the critical keys that these 3 Texas counties have shown is personal ownership, and the power of personal ownership to enable people often who are making modest salaries to accumulate very substantial assets, assets that can provide for them security in retirement, and assets that can also make a very real difference in the lives of their children and their grandchildren. And so I am hopeful we will see in Washington at least some modicum of the leadership, the bipartisan political leadership we've seen in these 3 counties in Texas, and that will stop the partisan bickering, roll up our sleeves, and fix the fiscal and economic problems we have in Washington. And with respect to Social Security, that we see leadership to save Social Security so it is strong for generations to come.
Well said. We'd be glad to take a few questions or dodge a few, as the case may be.
Senator, can you, and any of you, explain, I know the debt ceiling talk is coming, and can this be included at one point as an item, a topic that you guys can bring in and maybe look for a reform of Social Security? What are you doing in that?
Well, I hope we can use the opportunity to address the saving and by reforming Social Security and Medicare that Senator Cruz talked about. This is a perfect opportunity for us to deal with this big challenge. The fact of life in politics is that we need both political parties to join hands and do this together, because we know there's so much demagoguery and politics associated with the one party or the other trying to offer a solution. We saw this with President Bush trying to offer private accounts, and we learned today that there were some ways that could have been done better and perhaps eliminate some of the uncertainty. But this is a perfect opportunity, and indeed, when you have divided government like we have now, with Democrats in control of the Senate, President Obama in the White House, and Republicans controlling the House, this is a great way for bipartisan leadership to step up and address this problem and alleviate that concern that Senator Cruz talked about, where 50-year-olds and others think Social Security is not going to be there for me, and where seniors who are approaching retirement are worried about, well, am I going to be able to depend on this? I mean, we can eliminate a lot of anxiety and insecurity, so I do think this is an opportunity.
What would you say to folks who might be concerned that some of their entitlement checks might not come if the debt ceiling is not raised?
Well, I think the debt ceiling, it's important to understand what the debt ceiling is about. What it is not about is defaulting on the debt. And I think it is unfortunate that the President has been demagoguing on this issue. In my opinion, the United States should never, ever default on the debt. And the President could say any given day that under no circumstances will the United States default on the debt. In fact, in the last session, Senator Pat Toomey had legislation that would provide, in the event that the debt ceiling was not raised, interest on the debt would always be paid because the United States would never default on the debt. Harry Reid in the Senate did nothing to allow that to come to a vote. I intend to fight for similar legislation going forward, so we ensure, number one, that there is never a risk of default on the debt, and number two, that you have seniors who are dependent on Social Security, dependent on these programs, that those programs remain strong. The reason folks are focused on the debt ceiling is because if there's one thing Washington likes to do, it's nothing at all. It's continue doing nothing to solve a problem, and it is only through leverage points that you have any ability to cause change. And millions of Americans right now are worried about the fiscal and economic crisis in this country. I can tell you in the last debate over the fiscal cliff, the administration's position was under no circumstances will we consider any changes whatsoever to any entitlement programs, despite the fact that they are careening towards bankruptcy. That's not a responsible program. That's not the sort of leadership that I think the American people expect of both parties. They expect leaders to get up and solve these problems. Then I think we are stepping into two leverage points. Number one, the debt ceiling, and number two, the continuing resolution, both of which are coming up in the next couple of months, which are the best opportunities we're going to have to bring people to the table and ask them to roll up their sleeves and get serious about solving these problems.
Are we maybe looking at some sort of reform to Social Security as we know it, and maybe incorporating some of these ideas you guys gathered today?
Well, I think that, you know, the maddening thing about working in Washington as we do is that some of the solutions are well known and they're bipartisan and they're being ignored. The president's own bipartisan fiscal commission, the so-called Simpson-Bowles Commission that reported in December 2010, had some very good bipartisan recommendations on preserving Social Security. So we know what to do. There's no mystery here. It is helpful to learn about alternatives like we've learned here today, because a little bit of creativity can sometimes change the discussion for the better. But as I said at the outset, I think it's really a matter more of political will and avoiding the kind of brinksmanship that causes a lot of people anxiety over whether their check is going to come and that they're dependent on to live and maintain their standard of living.
Senator, what's the timeline? You gathered information here, you go back to Washington, I'm sure there's committee meetings and hearings and things. When is something going to be, when can the public see something solid out of this?
Well, we're just going to issue an executive order. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's the other branch of government. No, there is a process, and part of it's gathering information like we're doing today. And indeed, I learned today that there was, this used to be an option for counties, and now that's been taken away by a change in the federal law. And I'm interested in looking at what we might be able to do to open this up to other counties and other jurisdictions. So it will take a little bit of time. We're really sort of in the fact-gathering mode here today.
Maybe one more question?
You said this is a bipartisan attack to this problem. Do you see any challenges with that? Based on, you say you can't just do one party or the other.
Yeah.
We got to attack it.
Well, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of opportunities to do it, and I think I will certainly agree with Senator Cruz that this debt ceiling discussion and the continuing resolution, which is the appropriation bill that runs the government, will expire March the 27th. This is right upon us, and so I think we ought to seize the opportunity, and we also ought to avoid the sort of brinksmanship, which is entirely manufactured to bring us up to the edge. I mean, the crazy thing is about Washington, as Senator Cruz has observed and will now be intimately involved in, is that right after the fiscal cliff debate was over, Harry Reid, the majority leader, declared a recess for 2.5 weeks. While we know this is coming quickly. So we have a great opportunity, and hope springs eternal, but we're delighted to be here today to learn about the great success of these Texas counties and the benefits to retirees that are real and owned on a personal basis. So thank you all for coming out, and thanks to Senator Cruz for being here.
I know this was about Social Security, but can we get a quick comment on the gun control stuff that happened yesterday?
Sure.
Should that be
You have a question?
first? Or-
What I'm interested in is to know what the proposed solution is that would change an outcome like occurred at Sandy Hook. I mean, we all are grieving and mourning really about the great tragedy there, but I have yet to see a proposal from the president that is more than symbolism when it comes to changing the outcomes. We know that it's a bigger issue than guns. It's video games, movies that have somehow desensitized Americans and children from the violence that some of them embrace. And then we also know mental health issues are a big part of this. We know that the administration has done a very lousy job of enforcing current law. And indeed, Texas sends its mental health records to the federal government, has actually one of the best records in the country, and the Department of Justice has done virtually nothing to enforce that responsibility, which would then pop up on a background check. So what I would love to see us enforce current law and to come up with solutions that would actually change the outcome rather than just be a symbolic gesture.
I was very disappointed by the President's news conference yesterday. Every parent in the country was understandably horrified at what happened in Newtown. To see children murdered in elementary school takes your breath away. But I do not think the answer is more and more aggressive gun control from the federal government. And I think it was unfortunate that within minutes of that tragedy, you saw politicians running out to exploit the murder of children. The proposals the President laid out yesterday were being taken using this tragedy as an excuse. I do not support those proposals. I don't support them for two reasons. Number one, because restricting the right of Americans to keep and bear arms is unconstitutional. The Second Amendment is a critical part of our Bill of Rights. And what it means is the federal government cannot come and strip away your right to defend your home and to defend your family. And number two, gun control policies do not work. If you look at the jurisdictions that have enacted the strictest gun control policies, almost without exceptions, they have the highest crime rates, the highest murder rates. If you look at the jurisdictions like Texas that vigorously protect our right to keep and bear arms, almost without exception, they have the lowest crime rates, the lowest murder rates. These are policies that do not work. And I'll say one final point. I just returned from Afghanistan, from meeting with a number of our troops in the field. And there were two things that service member after service member said to me in Afghanistan. Number one, numerous men and women said, please help do something about the debt, about our federal government. A senior official who is serving defending our country right now, I asked the question, what keeps you up at night? What worries you? And I was expecting a threat of Al-Qaeda or the Taliban or something, and the answer was our national debt. The inability of Congress to fix this economic problem, because if we don't have the resources to defend ourselves, we're going to lose our position of strength and security in the world. And I heard that same concern reflected over and over again from men and women on the front lines in Afghanistan. But the second thing that multiple servicemen and women said to me is they clasped me by the arm and they said, please stand up and fight for the Second Amendment. And I'll tell you, I intend to work very, very hard to help lead the fight to defend our constitutional right to keep and bear arms and to stop any efforts from the federal government to deny that right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.